Hello and welcome back. This is MC1 Gamer bringing you Game 2 of Warhammer Age of Sigmar and the test just to see how sudden death comes into play when you have lopsided army sizes. Now, I want to give some preface here, and I'm sorry for not jumping into the slides right away. I know it can be a little bit long-winded before I kind of get to my reports because I like to do a lot of setup. And I know a lot of people also like shorter reports, and they also like just getting right to the action. But I just want to say this. I know there's a lot of contention with Age of Sigmar, and I know there's a lot of people that don't like it just because they don't like the way it looks. If you are one of those people who has not tested this game and who's not tried to play this game, I'm asking you, I'm appealing to you, give it a shot, try it out, and withhold your judgment until then. If you're refusing to do that, if you just do not want to put yourself out there and take the time, if you feel that you've read the rules and you know everything that possibly could happen and there's no way that anything's going to sway your mind, if you just don't like the way the text looks, you don't like the way it's built, it's your right, it's your prerogative. I'm fine with that. I have no problem, and I'm sure you don't care whether or not I'm fine with that. But what I'm asking you to do is, if you just do not have an open mind and you do not want to see this, click the back button, click the little X on the window, leave this video. You don't have to see this. This is not for you. You are not interested in exploring the possibilities. If you are willing to watch this video and you're willing and interested to take a look and see all the videos, not just mine, but anybody else who's out there putting this stuff up there, understand nobody's paying us, nobody's paying me. I'm taking my time to try and enlighten people in the community to this game and see and give them an opportunity before they've had an opportunity to do it themselves, to see if this is the kind of game that they would like. If you watch these videos and you feel it's still not for you, fine. It's your prerogative. If you watch these videos and you feel that it is something that you would like to get involved with, great. I'm thrilled that you're looking to give it a chance and you're going to go and put down your already purchased and possibly already painted models and collections and match them up to the new free PDFs that we have and free rules, even though they're only 4 pages, and give it a shot. But if you're going to go and stay through this entire video and then shit on it, just leave. You don't need to thumbs down. You don't need to waste your time. Just go. I'm not interested in your subscriptions. I'm not interested in whether you're following me. If you want to hear what I have to say and you want to watch the content I'm putting out, wonderful. I'm very happy to have you here. But if you're going to be nasty, please just don't bother. Just go somewhere else, because I just don't have the patience for it. I know that a lot of people are angry. I know there's a lot of people that are raging. They're upset because somebody took away their toy, and the toy they have now is maybe not the one that they like because it's a different color. Guess what? This is the game that Warhammer's putting out. If you don't like it, you can keep playing 8th. You can play something else. But if you're interested in Age of Sigmar, stay tuned. I'm going to be putting a lot of content out there. I have not formulated a definitive opinion yet across the board. There's still things I'm not sure I'm happy about. And there's still plenty of things that I like a lot. It's not perfect, but this is the game system. And we all hope that the rumors that are coming down about the potential, the possibility of some more structure in scenarios that will help with list building to help somewhat balance things out might come to pass. If they do, wonderful. We'll have a little bit more coherence in how we build our lists and a little bit more of a level playing field when we play against people. If not, then we're just going to have to try to have the gentleman's agreement and the gentlewoman's agreement that we should be having anyway. And beyond that, let's get into this. But please take it to heart what I'm saying. If you don't have an open mind and you're not willing to be reasonable with that, I don't mind that you put your opinions out there. Don't be nasty, okay? Because this is not the forum for you. I have no problem dropping the banhammer. If you're going to be that kind of a viewer, I don't need you. So for the rest of you, thank you for listening to this little mini tirade, and we're going to move on. So this particular test was the second game I had with the same player that I played with the first one, Andrew, and we played again at the only game in town. And this time we tried to turn everything on its head again. Previously, if you hadn't seen that video, go back and check out the video right before this. I played Vampire Counts, he played Skaven, and I was outnumbered. I played a smaller list, and he didn't play a massive list, but we played a situation where we didn't really anticipate it, but it just turned out to work out the way we were, the way I would hope that it would, that there would be a big disparity, and that turned out that the sudden death options, the sudden death goals really had a major impact on how we played the game, and made it very interesting because I had to achieve those goals. There was no way I was going to win that game in going head to head. In this game, it's going to be a lot different. I'm playing the Death Rattle Horde from the Vampire Counts. The War Scroll means that you can take the following units, and you get some benefits if you achieve that. I have a White King, which I chose not to take mounted. I have a unit of Black Knights, a unit of Graveguard, and 3 units of Skeleton Warriors. The benefits I get by completing that are I'm able to, if they're all within 6 inches of each other, then any wounds that I take, I'll read it exactly. Death Rattle Hordes close ranks with a singular will, making it difficult for enemies to break through to attack their vulnerable flanks. You can re-roll save rolls of 1 for a unit in a Death Rattle Horde while within 6 inches of other units from its battalion. So that means that if I can keep these units within 6 inches of each other, okay, any of those units that are within 6 inches of another unit within this scroll, then if I roll a 1 on saves to take wounds, I can re-roll those. That's pretty cool. And then I have another one, March of the Dead, which is really cool. I like this one. It says I can, if I choose to run and I move a model, I can get an additional 4 inches for the run. You get your move. Let's say it's 4 or 6, and then you roll a die 6 to see how much further you run. But you can't then do certain things like shoot or charge. In this case, if I do that, instead of rolling a die 6, I just get 4 inches added on. So I get above average roll and value to that movement, and I think that's pretty cool. And this is a slow-moving army. Everything except for the knights in this army are moved 4 inches, where before I was moving 6 with all the ghouls, all the flesh eater themed undead. In this one, the Black Knights can move, I think, 12, and everything else is 4. So I do have one fast-moving unit, but everything else is going to slog across. So the idea that I can run and get an extra bonus that's a little bit above average really helps, and you'll see how that falls in with when we get to the actual battle report. My opponent, as you can see, has a much different army, and for a Skaven army, this is a small army. He has 1 assassin, 3 Knight Runner units, 1 Gutter Runner unit. So he's got 4 units. He could have taken tons and tons of guys for each of these units, but you'll see what the look is, how many he took. So again, we're trying to turn everything on its head as previous, but in the previous battle report. But in this case, I decided I want to take 3 Skeleton Warrior units, and I wanted to make them very large. And there's some really cool things that you can get from skeletons. I mean, he's got some other abilities. Just to go over that, I neglected to mention that. He's got one in the Eshin Claw Pack where it's called Sprint and Stride. So the Skaven from this clan can strike quickly and without warning, and units in this Claw Pack can run and shoot in the same turn, or they can run and charge in the same turn. This is a fast-moving army that can still... these units can still, especially for, Night Runners and Gutter Runners, if they can shoot, if they can run and shoot, that means they're extremely mobile. So there's a lot of options here that really help my opponent, that you'll see that will come into play. And then another one is that they can reroll failed wounds if the target they're going up against has fewer models than its own. And that's also a big deal. I have some very large units that you'll see, but for units that are small, like say a character, you get the incredible benefit of being able to re-roll wounds. So let's go ahead and take a look at the board. Now we wanted to change up the board just a little bit for this one, and For this one, again, we changed the terrain, but we used the random chart. I'm really hoping that, again, there's going to be a random terrain generator chart that's going to include some of the arcane ruins and charnel pits and gardens of Moor and watchtowers, because there's new rules for all those. There's actually a PDF for them. But this is if you just want to put down some, and I would like to do that in addition to this. And every piece of terrain pretty much has a random effect. So in this case, we've got there's a rock that's to the north part of the board. That one is, if you're in 3 inches of that, if you sacrifice a unit, of die 3 models, I think it is, you can get a +1 to hit. There's ruins that are off to the left. I'm sorry. They are, I believe, sinister, so within 3 inches, you're -1 to battle shock tests. There's a forest dead center, and that's deadly, so if you run through those on a rolls of 1 for any models that go through them, they're slain, which is a big deal for multi-wound units, because it's not take a wound, it's you die, you're removed. There's another rock in that is... I may have switched this. I think that the rock in the north is this one, and the other one, the damned one, is the one in the south. But that's inspiring presence, +1 to bravery. And then there's a building. We didn't do anything for the walls. I mean, the walls are just -1 to hit if you're on the other side of it. That's the building is mystical, and it's very similar to what we did last time. It's confusing, so if you're within 3 inches, you have to roll at the start of the phase. On a 1, you're confused, you can't do anything, and on a 2 to 6, you can then re-roll wounds. It's kind of interesting. I like how it could be really bad but otherwise it's really good. So there's that, and so we decided to do half the board deployment again. So my opponent has, and here we have the deployment here with his 2 units. I forget which ones are gutter runners. I believe these are all, these might be all night runners, and the gutter runners will come on board later. So he has these, he spread out all over the board. He wanted to make sure he was going to kind of corral me. But he wanted to be, he has these 3 gutter runner units. I don't know where the assassin is. It can pop out of any one of his units. And then off the board is his assassin. Then he has a small unit of, I believe those were night runners that we saw on the board, and these are gutter runners. So here's my deployment. As you can see, I've got a lot more models than him, which is a shock because it's Skaven, right? This is more like a Mordheim warband that he's got, not even. So I've got about, let's see, I got 3 ranks, 3 each. I've got 9 knights, 9 black knights, and a unit of about, at least 20 or 30 skeletons. Another, you can see that there's about maybe a 20, I think it's about 30 skeletons on one side, 20 in the middle, and 20 all the way off to the right here. I have a pack of about 10 or 12 grave guard. In there is a hero, just a champion rather, and then you can see in there there's like a yellowish flag. My theme for my undead army was like Bretonnian undead, so they were Mouselin. So he's the standard bearer. He's in dismounted White King, and he's got the inspiring presence and a battle standard. So that's my army, and and even though there's one guy that looks like he's ethereal, he's not. I just put him in there so that it's very understandable which one is going to be the champion. Now, one thing that I noticed recently, I watched Once Bitten, and he made a really good point, and we actually already did this. After the first game, we realized, you know what? We can keep our cohesion, our blocks. We don't have to move these guys all out into a cloud. They can be stacked together. So we decided, stack them together. And if we needed to fold in, if you wish to, you don't have to do that. But if you want to fold in, you just take some guys off to the side, move your other guys up, and fold in. But let's use our trays. Let's see if we can use our trays, because my first thought was, when we first played the game, was we were going to try and keep them lined up, but they were still going to be spread out like skirmishing. We don't need to do that. So Once Bitten, I agree. That's what we found out, and I'm glad that you pointed that out, because that's one of the major points I was going to point out. Now, there's some really interesting things here that they've changed and they've changed everything, of course. What I like about skeletons, and this is what I like about a lot of the kind of weaker units in the game, they have rules that make them viable. They're not crap anymore. And there may be elite units, certainly, that are much better. But skeletons or zombies, things like that, are kind of the weakest units in the undead army. And everybody was like, oh, I had to take core. There's some real benefits to taking them. You take 20 or more skeletons, each of those skeletons now has 2 attacks. You take 30 or more, they got 3 attacks. There are other benefits like this on the Skaven and other armies as well. There's a reason to take some of these non-elite units because they have their own abilities, and they're great abilities. They actually make them viable. So if you have, mass blocks of troops, it makes sense. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole thing of points cost and all the rumors that we have that there might be some structure that's going on, but we're just going to test these disparate army sizes. So just buy into that for now, guys, because hopefully we'll have something that gives us a thing that can balance things out a little more. But let's buy also out into the fact that maybe some of these games are just not going to be balanced. Okay, so moving on. Some of the other abilities that are really cool, by the way, for people who haven't looked at vampire counts, are they have the abilities with their standards to restore wounds. Now, in the Flesh Eater themed unit, which was ghouls and crypt horrors and Ghoul King, you can regenerate a lot of those units, specifically the crypt horrors, but you couldn't restore lost models if they've been slain. In this one, there is an ability every turn, at the beginning of the turn, if you have a standard bearer, why wouldn't you take this, that you can return die 6 slain models to the unit in your hero phase. So every time I lose skeletons, or even the Graveguard, I'm rolling a die. It's die 6 for the Graveguard, die 3 for the Graveguard, die 6 for the skeletons. And I think, let me see if I can remember this real quickly before I move on. For the, it's die 3 for the Black Knights. So it's this, instead of having the spells that that would summon these guys up and restore them, the invocation spells from the previous edition, this is just something that's part of the unit. And that's great, okay? Because we don't have any wizards, as you can see in either of these armies, but there's still some magical effects. So you can play viable armies now and not have to worry about, hey, did I take the absolute necessity of bringing along a wizard? Okay, so let's get to the action here. So turn 1, he had a rule that he was able to make full moves on his guys before we were able to start, and that was great. I had no problem with that. So he started moving his guys up, and again, he was just closing the distance, and you could see what his goal is, because he is. And I failed to mention this before, because he is so outmatched, and he is more than 33% outmatched here. Because he's outmatched, he decided to take the goal of sacking the quarterback. Okay, he wanted to kill my White King. It's the only regular character I have on the board, except for a champion, and he has a very mobile army and an army that can move and run and shoot. So he's going to be able to dart around this board and still be able to fire. And even though I have 5 wounds, I think, on my White King, if he's able to kill him, he automatically wins the game. Obviously, I have to protect my White King. So now we have a narrative that's built into this. We have 2 completely different sized armies. One is much huger than the other. It's a Skaven player that is not used to being so vastly outnumbered, but now we have something that really is interesting. He is here on an assassination mission with an assassin too, to go and kill my general. I think that's phenomenal. I just love the story of that. Okay, so he moves up again, his Night Runner unit on the left. And then I get to go. So I start moving up my skeletons, and I start sweeping them around this forest. I don't want to get anywhere near this forest if I can help it, because if I have a lot of guys, I'm going to roll lots of dice if I run through there. And if I run through there or charge through there, I'm going to have to roll. And on ones, I'm going to lose models. I mean, yes, they can be restored, but still, why should I have to lose models? So I move up with everything. I don't think I did any runs except for maybe the left-hand skeletons. And again, as you can see, I've got my White King way between most of these units. I've got 2 units of Skeleton Warriors and 1 unit of Graveguard that are just kind of surrounding my White King. And there's a nice ability with that White King that if you have a standard, and I'm going to go see if I can grab that before. There we go. It's an Infernal Standard. So it basically, if any units are slain within 9 inches of it, on a roll of 6, whatever that attack was that slayed that model, it's like a 6-up ward. You get that model back, and that's killer, because what if it's a multi-wound unit and it did 3 wounds or whatever? You ignore that attack that did that, if I'm reading it correctly. And that's what it says. It says the Infernal Standard sustains that warrior, and the attack that slew him is ignored. All right, so that's a big deal if it's a multi-wound type of situation. If you have beefy, characters or units, beefy, 3 or 4 wound models that are nearby this standard, and he can plant it in the ground, which means he can't move, and that is extended to 18 inches. So it's a really cool type of a thing. To bring a White King now with that Infernal Standard. So I'm definitely going to take advantage of that. Right now it's just a 6-up save against anything that dies. So I have the ability, to restore units. I have a really, really hard to beat army compared to what he's got right now. But he can win this game by trying to kill the White King. Alright, so I declare charges because his turn was just basically moving these guys up. He had nothing else that he could do. He wasn't in range. So I just did standard moves, and then I declare charges to try and just wipe out some of his units. If I can reduce the, 1 or 2 of these units first turn, this would be wonderful. And I fail with with 1. It was a long charge. I mean, what are you going to do? He moved up close enough. I think he was trying to bait me and trying to get, these guys out in the open. And of course I failed with my Black Knights. That was key. And his turn starts, and he brings his gutter runners on. So again, don't forget, he can run and still shoot or charge. So he brings those on, and then he decides, okay, I failed with my charges. He decides, okay, I've got these guys out in the middle, and now I'm going to retreat. So he runs everybody back, and he's just waiting for an opportunity now, I guess, to try and get my White King. And he swoops these Night Runners around the left-hand side, but to close, again to my left flank. And just so you know, because we won the previous game, I rolled on the triumph table. I rolled a 4, so I had the inspired ability, so I can re-roll all of my fail to hits for 1 unit in 1 combat phase. So I'm going to determine when I'm going to do this. It could come into play, but it's nice to have that cohesion. Consider that if you're playing a string of games with somebody, that could really have that could be really cool. It's a really nice effect, and it's only 1 ability, and it transfers over from the previous game. So turn 2, and we roll for the Black Knights, and I'm right next to this building where if I roll a 1, I can't move, I'm confused, so I have a bunch of confused Black Knights. I was in great charge, I would have definitely been able to close in on one of his 2 units to the north part of the board. I would have been able to get a nice 12-inch move, and then I would have easily gotten a charge unless I rolled like a 3. But of course I rolled a 1, and now my Black Knights can't move, so they're stuck there. And then I decided I was going to run one of these units, one of the skeletons, through the forest, because I want to try and get as close as I can to him, and he's just too fast. So I took the chance. So I lost 4 of my skeletons. I was very happy that I could still use some of my unit fillers, because with the way the game was looking when I first played it, I was like, I can't use my unit fillers. Well, look, guys, you can still stack these things up. It doesn't mean you can't. Once bitten is absolutely correct. So as you can see, that's what I'm doing. So I lost 4, and I'm not worried about that because I can get them back at the beginning of the next hero phase. And then I start moving the rest of these guys up. And again, I move my White King behind the wall, between my Grave Guard, some of the skeletons and the Black Knights. And on his turn, he then moves, again, like I said, he can move and fire. He runs these guys up. He gets like a 6 on this 1 unit on his turn. And he gets right up in my grill, and then he's able to shoot. He can even charge if he really wanted to. He could probably get a couple of guys in there on my White King. So this is an extremely, extremely mobile and deadly Skaven army, even though he has only a small model count. So he goes ahead and he moves this unit again further. He's got very small units, but he's surrounding me, which is astonishing. So this unit moves up towards where the forest is. He moves up his gutter runners, and these guys, they move up, and his goal is to just try to shoot and hit and maybe kill a few of my knights. And it's going to be hard to wipe out the entire unit, of course. He doesn't have a lot of his gutter runners, but they're out in the open. There's no penalty to hit, and even though I think I have a 5-up save, which is kind of weird on a mounted unit, but then again, look, if he doesn't wipe the complete unit out, I can restore them. So he goes to, I believe, shooting, and he goes and he starts targeting my White King, and I think he misses on everything. The only thing he has is a -1 because of the terrain. Decides to start shooting with his gutter runners at the knights, and I think he failed to wound, or I made some saves, and then we go to turn 3. So in turn 3, again, we start rolling for lost models. I get my models back on all the skeletons, so that was the theme. And so I turned them around, and I believe I also ran them up to the north part of that forest, and I only lost 1. So no big deal. Again, if they don't get wiped out from other effects, I'll probably get that guy back. I turn around, and this is one of the interesting things about this game. It doesn't really matter what your facing is. It's one of those things, I think is lost from 8th edition that was a valuable and interesting part of that game, and I liked that part of that game. But because this is that way that game is, you can just turn on a dime. There's no line of sight. There's no facing issues. So essentially all those models did it about face and without any loss to movement. It doesn't cost you anything to do that. It doesn't cost you anything to turn on your axis. You just basically move from where you were and change the direction. So I just basically turned around my knight unit and moved him I had to stop within 3 inches of his knight runner unit. Now I can charge them in the following turn. And on a charge, I have lances that do, if they hit and they wound, I believe they do double wounds. So that's pretty nice for Black Knights. Again, these deathly charge, add 1 to the wound rolls and damage for units with barrel lances. Okay, so it's +1 to wound and +1 to damage. So that's a big deal. They can be saved, but if I get them through, they're double wounds. And it's not going to make any difference. These guys only have 1 wound each. But still, against multi-wound units, they can start racking that up. So then I start moving again. I have this, again, a large block. I think it's like about 30 skeletons, so I'm going to move them across the lower part of the forest. And then, of course, I charge everything on this Knight Runner unit, and I just surround him. This is just going to be an obliteration. I've got double attacks on my skeletons, so there's got to be like 40 attacks on these skeletons. They're not all going to be able to do attacks, so it's not 40 really. It's probably just the first 2 ranks, but they all get double attacks because of that. And then I'd be able to fold in afterwards. And then I have a bunch of attacks from these Grave Guard, and the Grave Guard are pretty brutal. Again, after folding in, I just kind of surround his gutter runners, and they just get destroyed. So, and then, as I said, the same thing happens with his Night Runners here. They just didn't have a chance. There's just I had 2 units that moved in on them, and he just didn't have the body. So now he's down 2 of his units, and we still haven't seen his assassins. We still got, I think his 1 or 2 units left. I believe he has 2 units left, and then he's got the assassin. So he really needs to go after the quarterback. So you can see on the lower part of this forest, he does a run in. And I think he might have lost like maybe two guys. And then he does the same thing on the north part of the forest. So again, my White King is stuck behind enemy lines, but he's going to be able to have an opportunity to potentially get to him or at least shoot at him. And we'll see how that turns out. So now we get to turn 4. And turn 4, he wins the roll to go first, and he again does another run, and it was a pretty good roll, so he gets right up on my my White King with 1 unit. And then when we get to the charge phase, he charges right in. So now my White King is surrounded by all these Night Runners, and out pops the assassin. He had written down previously what unit had the assassin in it, so this was the unit that had the assassin in it. So now I'm really, really outnumbered, and this is a big deal because he gets to reroll wounds. So an assassin plus, it was like 6 or 8 of these Night Runners. My White King is really in a precarious situation, and he moves up these other guys, and this other Knight unit can still shoot, even though I'm in combat. They can still shoot at him. So he has a number of different methods where he can start whittling my guy down, and of course he shoots, and he's able to drop a couple of wounds on me, and the assassin fortunately whiffs, and then I attack back, and I do at least 1 wound. But his Night Runner unit doesn't have a very good leadership, and this is a very important thing I mentioned in my last video. If you do at least one wound to your opponent, guess what? He's got to make a battle shock test, and if you've got a really bad leadership, like a 6, now you're down by 1. You have to roll a 5 on 2d6. There's a good chance that you can get wiped out, and that's exactly what happened. I lost 3 wounds on my White King. He has 5 wounds total. And I was able to wipe out this entire unit because of not just wounds that I did. I think I might have done 2 wounds or more, but whatever it was, his roll was pretty high, and the rest of these guys fled off the battlefield. And now it's just my assassin, my White King beset by his assassin, and I'm going to be able to get the next turn to have an effect on this. So what do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to charge. I charged in with my knights. I mean, I had other knights that were even in the rank behind this, but they weren't close enough where they could do anything about it. So I just surrounded him when I folded in, and I just want to kill off this assassin because this is his best chance to kill my White King. And I did 4 wounds to his assassin. He has 5 wounds. He's got 1 wound left. And again, to win, all he has to do is assassinate my general. And that's exactly what he does. The assassin unloads with 1 wound left. I was not able to take him out, and he's able to kill in the final turn of the game, the final combat of the game, and wins. And you can see, based on how outnumbered he was tremendously outnumbered. I had, let's see, 9, 20, 30, 50, I had 70 or 80 troops on the table, and he had maybe 20. He may have had like 25. Okay, that was a very highly outnumbered army. I was more than double of what he had, and the sudden death conditions kicked in, and he's able to win the day. So we had fun with this. We had a tremendous amount of fun. Things were moving around with the blocks because we had realized, hey, let's keep these things in unit cohesion the way we would do it in 8th, and it was a lot quicker. And as you can see, if I turn 4, once again, the game ended, and if we were to play another game, he would have had a triumph, and we would have had probably a completely different set of army structure, and they probably would have been lopsided as well. The nice thing about sudden death, I hope it doesn't come into play too much, because it would be nice if you have agreements with your player, where you could have a similar size lists and have a more balanced game. That's an agreement between you and your player. But it would be nice to have something where that would be more consistent, something more official and regulated, maybe something from GW or from the player community, hopefully something that's fair, because not everybody agrees on comp. But it's also nice to have these types of games. You could have situations like the last stand of the 300. You're way outnumbered, and you have objectives, and there's scenarios that are going to have army composition as well that are supposed to be coming. They're already in the 96-page fluff book for the starter set. We know that there's going to be expansions coming down the road, and they're going to have all manner, from what we understand, of unit composition suggestions. You need to take X from column A, Y from column B, and so on, which will help. But I don't want to lose this type of game either. The idea that you can play a game where even an underdog can come back from being vastly outnumbered and still win the game, that is a great result. And regardless of what you might think about Age of Sigmar or 8th edition, or whether you're not like these rules or whatnot, I don't want to lose that element, that potential type of a game, that potential end result, because it was really gratifying for the two of us. In 2 games, both times the underdog was able to pull out a victory. And we walked away pretty happy about it. We only got the 2 games in, but there'll be more. I don't think I'm going to test the sudden death out as much unless it does come to pass organically from whatever unit selections are picked by me and my opponents. But I'm very glad that I was able to put these 2 out there, and I hope you enjoyed it, and it opened your eyes a little bit to the possibilities and how you can offset some of the crazy, differences in lists. Clearly, you don't want to have an entire army, a huge, massive army of elite troops with monsters and heroes and mounted, dragons and whatnot against a small collection of nothing. But then again, you know what? With a sudden death victory, there's always a chance that you could potentially still win that game. And look, it's not perfect. It's FUD. You can take one model in some cases and just have the endure possibility where you hide that guy, and if you can survive, which is unlikely, but it's possible, then you win the game, and that's kind of cheesy. But the idea that you have this as a way to offset that imbalance, I think is a favorable thing. I don't think it's the answer. It certainly needs more, but I don't want to lose this after efforts to balance the game are enacted, which there's so many people are craving and looking for. This type of a game is still cool, and I only hope that the resource material that we're hearing that we're getting from GW that does put some additional structures into the game in terms of list building and scenarios and whatnot doesn't have this filtered out. And I only hope that maybe if there is an organized rule set that whether the community does it or GW, that can be usable in GTs and tournament settings, that also doesn't lose this element because it was a lot of fun. So I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day, everybody, and see you next time.